FitFizz. FitFizz. Let's go.
Welcome back to the FitFizz podcast, friends. I am grateful you decided to listen today because I'm spilling my guts on lab testing and hopefully sharing some tidbits that you might not have heard before and definitely not things that your regular doctor has told you. I'm sure you've probably been to the doctor and he or she has decided to order lab work. You go, you have your blood drawn, then you go back for another appointment to discuss the results, and they might or might not have anything enlightening to say. You probably understand the concept of having your cholesterol checked or vitamin D or maybe a few other things. But if you're like me, like I was a few years ago, I figured that they knew best. And if there was anything that was in question, they'd surely have a test done for it, right? Wrong. Oh, so wrong. The truth is, more often than not, they're just scratching the surface with what can be tested. I'm eager to elaborate on this in today's episode, but in case you're new to the FitFizz podcast, I'll make a brief introduction. I am Kelly Wilson, owner of FitFizzStudio.com, and I'm a personal trainer, nutrition coach, behavior change specialist, autoimmune disease fighter, and I've worked in the health and fitness industry for over 20 years. So the information shared in this episode and all episodes is for educational and informational purposes only. Although I do hold several certifications, I'm not a doctor, so none of the contents should be interpreted as an intent to heal, diagnose, treat, cure, or prescribe. And now that that's out of the way, let's get on with the show. Lab testing. Without lab tests, it's hard to know exactly what's going on in our bodies. If you listened last week, you might remember how I said it would be beneficial for us to stop equating feeling good with health. That's because we can't feel damage or destruction that's going on in our cells until it's been going on for several years or maybe even decades, and eventually it leads us down a path of disease, unfortunately. It's not uncommon to hear people say they want a cure for cancer. I do too. It sounds lovely, right? But I think it's important to push more to the front of our minds of how important and how powerful prevention of diseases actually is. And as I said before, most doctors are barely scratching the surface with what can be done in regards to lab testing. You can change that by realizing that you could potentially ward off disease and live a lot longer if you're willing to not have full dependency on your doctor and take control of your own health. Part of the reason that doctors aren't testing deeper is due to insurance regulations, for one. If something that's going on with you can't be covered by insurance or masked with a pharmaceutical drug, then they're not going to test for it, period. This is yet another reason why I strongly recommend finding a functional or integrative medicine doctor. They will test deeper because they're not bound by the regulations of insurance or by government regulations surrounding pharmaceutical drugs like regular doctors are. Then after that, they can also help you find which foods might be contributing factors or which genes might be causing other issues and how they're all working in conjunction with each other and how they'll help you figure out a plan to treat what's actually causing the problem instead of just masking it in the way that pharmaceutical drugs mask problems. Pharmaceutical drugs never actually fix the real problem. They just mask it. So you can order lab testing on your own. I know that might come as a surprise to some of you, and just a handful of years ago, I didn't realize that myself either. And 9 times out of 10, when you do it on your own, it's probably not going to be covered by insurance. But before you get alarmed, if you've never done this before, let me tell you that it's probably cheaper than you might guess. For example, if you got a cholesterol test done on your own, it would probably cost less if you paid out of pocket and did it yourself than if your doctor ordered it, sent it to the insurance covered part of it, and then you got billed for the remainder. But that's why your doctor doesn't tell you this, because neither the doctor nor the insurance company makes money that way. And it's no secret that they both rely on each other to stay in business. So They're not going to tell you. So that's why I'm here to tell you. So before I explain the how and the what and all of the details, I want to explain to you a few more reasons why I don't think you should settle for the lab tests that any general practitioner might order for you. I don't know if you're like this, but if you're like me, I like to know why I'm doing things if I'm going to bother to do them. So that's what I'm about to explain. If you know anyone else who might have something like fibromyalgia, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, Graves' disease, lupus, Crohn's, just to name a few common and increasingly common autoimmune diseases, then or those people can tell you that their original doctor probably ordered labs and probably said at some point that their lab results looked normal. But yet the patient knew something much deeper was wrong. And that's definitely what happened to me. And it happened several times. And eventually I'll dedicate an episode or two dedicating my actual stories to this. But the point is, I was told my lab results were normal. And time again, over nearly a decade, I was frustrated. I was defeated. I was confused. And I felt like I was gaslighted by somebody who I was supposed to be able to trust, my doctor. But I had learned enough to know towards the end of that, which became my breaking point, I had thankfully learned enough to know that there were other ways. But yet I hadn't learned quite how yet. So I started to dig and learn, and I had to do it quickly because at that point I was barely able to function for 4 hours a day. And that's no exaggeration. It was bad. And I was dealing with severe exhaustion, severe brain fog, and I was trying to learn these things, and I was so desperate and determined. So when you go and get a lab test done by a regular doctor, they'll compare your results to what's considered a quote unquote normal range. Now you're going to hear me say normal, and I'm going to say it like that. It might sound annoying, but I need this word to stand out. So you're going to hear me say it several more times, but I'm saying normal because it's not normal, but it's what regular doctors say normal. So the range of what's normal is determined by all of the other people who take that same lab test. And that's not necessarily always updated. Many tests and many doctors are using normal ranges that are several decades old. Now, that's very alarming. So with the explosion of autoimmune disease and chronic diseases, everyone's turning up normal because it's an outdated model and those ranges have no basis in actual health or disease. Most people who are getting those tests done are doing so because of some type of symptom, but the normal ranges are essentially useless. So put that together with the fact that what most doctors order isn't actually inclusive enough for most chronic and autoimmune diseases, and it's truly a waste of time and money. So are you starting to see why it's probably better to take lab testing into your own hands and to do it on your own? Here's a little analogy that I think kind of fits with if you go to a regular doctor and expect them to just order all those same lab results. A lot of you are probably too young to remember going to a gas station and having a full-time attendant working there who would fill up the tank for you. And I remember being a little girl, being in the driver's seat with no seatbelt because there were no seatbelt laws with my dad, and he'd just pull up and say, fill her up, and they'd fill up the gas tank for you. Now imagine if you did that in 2018, 2019, here pretty soon. Imagine pulling up to the gas station, parked next to the gas pump, and you're waiting for someone a gas station attendant to fill up the gas tank for you. You're going to be sitting there the rest of your life. And I think that's kind of similar to going to a general practitioner and expecting them to order lab tests to get to the root of autoimmune or chronic diseases. You're going to be sitting there the rest of your life. They're not going to do it. So realizing that is a huge step in the process. This might seem like a harsh statement, but a lot of doctors don't actually really care about those outdated ranges. They've put in their work. They went to medical school. They're getting paid and they're doing their job. So why invest the effort into a complete revolution of standard healthcare that won't actually change their lifetime? That's where functional and integrative medicine comes in. They actually do care and they are working hard to change lab testing. Functional medicine doctors don't even care what's considered normal because they know the normal range is not going to help you at all. What they do look at is what's optimal. So here are the two key words. As I've been saying, normal, which is not normal and it's useless. And then there's optimal. Optimal is good. Optimal is what you want. Optimal is modern day. Optimal is what functional medicine looks at. So I hope I said that clearly enough. So if you're not currently sick or troubled with any concerning symptoms, it's a good idea to start getting lab tests done on your own so that you have valid data to use down the road. If you start to develop serious issues, you'll have a real normal range and not a fake normal range to compare your symptoms to, or your changing lab tests or changing health issues too. Very few people are this proactive, but that's part of why I want to get this message out. If you can be that proactive, you are truly taking control of your longevity. And I think it's one of the smartest things you can do for your overall health. And I'm sure your family wants you to stick around longer. So being that proactive might be worth a little bit of extra work. So if you do suspect that you have some chronic health issues or autoimmune issues, these lab tests are a great place to start because it'll start leading you down a path of looking for the root causes. So most functional medicine doctors will prescribe you to get lab work done in the same way that I'm going to tell you and give you links to. And they do so in order to save you money. They're not interested in doing a big markup in the way that regular doctors and insurance companies do. So when you are working with a functional medicine doctor, then they also are armed with the knowledge of optimal ranges, the real useful ranges, and they'll help you create a plan from there in order to help you feel better. So how do you know which tests you should get? Now, this is a very deep and wide topic. So since I'm not a doctor, I am not allowed by law to tell you exactly what I think you should get on an individual basis, but I can guide you in the right direction. You can go to my website and go to the lab testing page for links on how to find places to get lab testing done near you. And that'll all be in the show notes as well, so you can easily find it. And they're all places that I've worked with myself and had great experiences with. Most places will have lab test packages based on what you're trying to accomplish. For example, if you have thyroid issues and your doctor only tests for T4 and TSH, which is typical of what regular doctors do, but you want to get the thyroid test that will actually give you the real information of what's actually going on. Most of these places will have a thyroid package to make it easy for you. And in that package, it'll include several thyroid tests. They'll be testing different aspects of thyroid hormones, and it might be anywhere from like 8 to 25 different tests, so give you a lot of great information. So they'll kind of guide you along in that kind of aspect with finding a package if you're not quite sure what you're looking for. And you also don't have to get a package. You can order them all individually too. A lot of tests, a lot of them are like in $12 or $19, and they have sales of all the time. Every week they have like a different sale. So they're really surprisingly cheap individually, but it can add up rather quickly if you're doing a whole lot of them, but it's still probably going to be cheaper than if your doctor ordered those tests and submitted it to the insurance and you paid the remainder. Those are the reasons why I think it's just great to empower yourself and take matters into your own hands. So to dig a little bit deeper on what you should get done. Now, this is not like a prescription of what everyone should absolutely do, but give it some thought and how it relates to the current state of your own health. So here are some tests that a lot of functional medicine experts recommend as a starting point. I'll also create a PDF with this list in case you don't want to write all these down or can't remember them all. I'm going to list about 10, but I'll put a PDF that's going to be on the web page for this episode. So The link will be in the show notes, and it's fitfizzstudio.com/podcast-06. But here's a starting point. So 1 would be CBC, which stands for Complete Blood Count. 2, CMP, Comprehensive Metabolic Panel. Now, comprehensive, that means it's going to cover a lot. So there'll be a ton of markers depending on where you go and what you order, but it might include things like glucose, albumin, protein, sodium, chloride, bicarbonate, bilirubin, creatinine, so a whole bunch of stuff. Another one, number 3, a lipid panel. This is your cholesterol and triglyceride levels. Number 4, HbA1c. This will tell you your average blood sugar levels. And number 5, HSCRP. This is your C-reactive protein. This is a measure to test for the inflammation in the body. So if you eat junk food, you probably have some kind of inflammation, and it's important to see those numbers. Don't let it scare you to a point where you just don't want to know, because you might be setting yourself up for a big, nasty surprise down the road. And there's all kinds of reasons why your CRP might be high. And it can also just be related to genetic factors, which is another topic. But moving on, vitamin D, that's probably no surprise. Now, if you go to order vitamin D, the first time I did this, I was confused because there were like 7 different kinds of vitamin D. The one you want to look for is 25-hydroxy vitamin D. That would be the most common one that you would want to get tested for. Another kind, number 7, your iron and ferritin. Very important to check that out. We know that iron is important, but many people are deficient. But on the other hand, some chronic diseases can cause iron overload, which is extremely toxic in the body. Number 8, homocysteine. Very important for many reasons to get that checked. Folate, it can tell you if you're folate or vitamin B deficient. My homocysteine was like 4 times off the charts high. And I've found out that's related for me and my body and my autoimmune issues related to a genetic mutation called MTHFR. And that's another whole rabbit hole in itself. But just to let you know, like I would not have found that if I didn't get that test done by myself. My regular doctor would not order it. And number 9, sex hormones. I'm sure you've all heard of them before. Men have it pretty easy. They've got testosterone to worry about. Women have testosterone, estrogen, estradiol, progesterone, and a whole bunch of other things, because actually, I meant to mention this, vitamin D is actually a hormone. And then number 10 on my list is thyroid hormones. Generally, those affect women the most, but men can be affected too. Regular doctors usually only test 2 or 3 things, but there are so many more thyroid hormones that should be checked that give you a huge explanation for any issues you might be having. And also for women, it's really important to remember to not go in the middle of your menstrual cycle. Also, don't go while you have a cold. Try to go when you're healthy, for men and women. And going back to women, the ideal time to go, I would say, is probably about 7 days after the end of your last period. And then when you do lab testing, try to always go at that same interval if you can. So what do you do after you get your results? Well, you can work with a functional medicine doctor, or you can do research on your own and look for optimal ranges. Or you can also, there's a cool website, I'll put the link, I'm not an affiliate, it's called labtestanalyzer.com, and that will help you learn a whole lot about your results. It's really cool, really simple to use. So taking these tests annually or every 3 months or 6 months will stay on top of your game and maximize the quality of your life. So use them to improve everything and how you feel. And a lot of times it will give you more energy if you can fix what's actually happening on a cellular level. There will be links for everything in the show notes, and it will all be on FitFizZstudio.com. And if you feel like you have a ton of questions pertaining to your own goals, you can also visit the coaching section of my website to set up a one-on-one consultation with me where we can go more in depth. And if you found today's episode to be valuable, I hope you'll subscribe and write a review about what you liked. I find your feedback very valuable. And as a new podcast, it helps my show to gain a little bit more exposure if you take the time to write out a review. So thank you so much for listening. Until next time, breathe, stay strong, and always celebrate victory.
Celebrate victory.